bringing somebody on in acquisitions for real estate, like it's a pretty intensive job. Like that's the lifeblood of a lot of our businesses and stuff. So you know what? Their training's intense as well. Like ours is a 12-week program. Like I don't expect them to get a deal like within like in the first 12 weeks. Maybe around like week 10 or 11, they'll start, get some deals, but it's intensive and like it goes through a whole process and things. I think a lot of people bring people on and they're just like, okay, here's the list. You got to call these people. Here's your script. Like we need you to get a deal tomorrow. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Like that's not realistic. You got to make sure and I'm not saying that like, hey, it has to be 12 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is, but it has to be you have to put some time into it and have that schedule to where it comes back to, like I said, like making sure they're set up for success, making sure they're supported and they're trained up on what you want them to do.
Brian, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Camp, head of partnerships with DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself, hearing your stories and really giving you a chance to educate our audience on the best practices that you've learned over the years. So today, really excited to welcome on our friend, Brian Snider. He's the CEO of Simple Wholesaling, which you guys wholesale, a couple hundred properties, few hundred properties every year. You're a former school teacher that got into real estate, and you're a coach with Sharper Business Solutions and a certified Empire Operating Business Systems trainer. So excited to talk business systems, operations, all that on how to build a team, things like that. And then you were also the award winner of Think Realty's Single Family Investor of the Year last year. So congrats on that, and welcome on, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Glad to be here. Glad to be able to give back in any way or help out anybody. So hopefully people can learn from the mistakes that I've made, that we've made, and yeah, just willing to help out, man. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. We love teaming up with you guys. I mean, anything that we do together, has always been great stuff. Love your community that you all have built, and I love kind of the purpose and passion that you guys have within your own business too. So excited to dig into all this stuff together. To kind of start with, I know you definitely have an interesting background with your teaching and how you got into real estate. Can you maybe share that journey with our audience too, and what drew you to real estate?
Yeah, so just complete coincidence, honestly. So I started off teaching. I was a teacher for 14 years, taught middle school math, like absolutely loved it and stuff like that. My path was always going to be to teach and then become a principal, get in and just be a principal for the rest of my life. And that's what I thought I was going to be able to do and stuff. But once I finished my master's and got into becoming a principal and doing my internship and stuff like that, I realized real quick, like, I don't want to be a principal. Like, this is a terrible job. Like, I don't know who would want to do this. This is like my personality. It doesn't fit it. I knew that like every decision I made, half the people would like it, half the people wouldn't. When it comes to parents, that's always tough to deal with and things like that. Like I said, it doesn't fit my personality. So in the meantime, I met my buddy, Brett Snodgrass, just met him through church, through a church group, and became really good friends. And we would go out every now and then and watch a basketball game, grab a beer and things. And literally one morning, I was just kind of telling him, we went out to breakfast one morning, and I told him, like, hey, I think I'm going to teach for one more year, and I think I'm going to be done. Like, I need to do something else. Like, I've reached all my goals. I need a new challenge and stuff. And then in the meantime, kind of the funny thing was, like, within our friend group, like, everybody knew Brett was in real estate, but nobody had any idea what he did. Nobody understood what it was, or he does something, he flips houses, he does something, whatever it is. But so literally after that breakfast, I quit my teaching job and started working with him, not knowing anything about real estate, not knowing anything about wholesaling or what I was even going to be doing or anything like that. So I came on board with him and really started off doing some marketing and like teaching people at our meetup. So I brought on to like become like basically a teacher of wholesaling, not knowing what wholesaling really was or anything, but started doing that. And yeah, it's been a quick ride and stuff like that. But Brett and I, we've got a pretty good business going here in Indianapolis, and it's gone pretty well.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you guys have a phenomenal reputation, and I love everything that we see that you guys are working on. So, do you think your background as a teacher really prepared you well for what you're doing now? Like, what skills kind of transfer do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think it definitely. I think teaching, like teachers, is as in general, and I am biased by this as a former teacher, but I think teachers as in general, like, they have the most transferable skills that can come into about any type of business. So through our business, what are you really doing? Like, my strengths are portrayed by like building a team and the systems and processes. I had to be super organized as a teacher. I had to have good operations. I had to meet every student on every level. I had to teach a curriculum. I had to do all those things. I'm doing the exact same stuff now when I'm building my team of like, hey guys, we're going to implement this new system, or hey, here's our process map to be able to do this so we can be more efficient, or hey, we're gonna bring on DealMachine as a partner, and we're gonna use them for lead generation. Here's how this works, and I have to teach it to them and stuff. But also too, just being able to have empathy and be able to relate to people on their level. When you're in real estate and you're talking to a lot of motivated sellers, whether you're wholesaling or flipping or whatever it is, if you're getting properties from motivated sellers and negotiating stuff like that, I think my teaching background leans a lot towards that, of just being able to, like I said, meet them at their level, empathize with them, and just help them out. So it's really becomes a win-win situation for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless of what you're in business, and in real estate especially, it's a relationships game. And it's about being able to really communicate well and communicate your goals and your vision, and really understand someone else and ask great questions. And I think those are all things that teachers do extremely well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And one of the biggest things, one of the things I loved about teaching, and one of the things I love about real estate, is no matter what you were doing, you can always do it better. So I could always teach a lesson better. Same thing with this. Now, I don't care how many deals we do, or what this one deal looked like, or that. We can always do a better job somewhere across the board. So that's where I really like that efficiency and digging into our processes and operations and that type of stuff.
Yeah, love that. So to kind of begin with too, I know many people listen to this might be a newer investor, maybe haven't quite done their first deal yet. They're newbie to real estate investing. In general are ready to take action here. But I think a lot of stuff you're talking about, it might seem like something where like, oh, someday I'll build a team, someday I'll do this. Something that's in the future, and maybe a newer investor might not think applies to them right away. Do you think new investors should really focus on processes, systems, and all the things you're talking about there? Can you kind of talk through why that's valuable for newbies too?
Yeah. So and this is kind of an open-ended question. I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation too. It all depends on the type of leader you are. So if you are more of a salesperson and a sales guy and things like that, then yes, I think you need to have the systems and processes to bring on your team. Like, I think you need to have those in place first before you bring on your team, because if you're a salesperson, you can get deals. That's the main thing. Me, I'm on I'm on the opposite end a little bit. I can do sales. I'm pretty good at sales and stuff, but I'm more of an operations process guy. So in that case, I know I just needed to get the sales guys. I just needed people to get deals for me, because I can take care of the operations and process stuff. So it kind of all depends on like what type of leader you are. And a lot of people as entrepreneurs, they fall into one of those two buckets. Either they're more of a salesperson or more of a process person. And I think depending on who you are, that's the person that you need to bring on first. That's the thing you need to pay attention to first. For my case, I'm more of a process person. Get the salespeople on and build my team first, because I can take care of all that other stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any tips or advice on going through the process you've been discovering, if it's not obvious to yourself, or like, oh, I might be the sales, I might be the operator. Like, how do you go about kind of discovering, where your natural strengths lie?
Yeah, so I like to just go through a quick little exercise, and Gary Harper taught this to me, and it's just basically make a list of all the things that you do, like on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, and then all those things, they're going to fit into one of like 4 or 5 buckets. So, and those buckets basically being like, maybe it's something that you love doing and that you're great at. Like, man, I want to do this all day long. I want to I'm great at this. This is amazing. Like all this stuff. Like, number one, all those things, keep doing all those things. Don't give up any of those. Don't hire out for any of those or anything like that. But then some other things, maybe you're good at it and you just like doing it. Like, that's okay. But then everything else is going to fall into something of maybe you're good at it, but you don't like doing it. Or maybe that you like doing it, but you're not good at it. Or you also have those ones that you're not good at and you don't like doing. So really anything on those things, if there's a not in front of those things, those are the things that you want to hire for first, especially the ones that you don't like doing and that you're not good at. Get those off your plate, whether it's, bringing on a virtual assistant or some type of an admin or a sales, whatever it is, hire for that stuff first, because that's the stuff that probably takes up the most amount of your time. You're not good at it anyway, and you don't like doing it. You're going to burn out on it. So when you're trying to figure out of like, oh, what do I need to be doing and what do I hire with first, just make a list of all that stuff and try to figure out if it's something that you like doing and that you're good at. Do those things, hire out for all those other things first, and take care of it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, whenever we're going through that process as well, a lot of times it'll be, understanding what are those tasks that you're pushing off, that you're procrastinating, and what are those tasks that give you energy versus really, go through the day and you feel like, you're dreading trying to do that again.
Yeah.
I think it's a great. Very frame of mind. But yeah.
Yeah, there's actually, and then there's a second level to that as well. I'm the type of person that, like, I'm kind of a jack of all trades a little bit. Like, I can be good at a lot of stuff, and I'm that person. I like doing a lot of stuff and things. So then for me, it also became like, what takes up the most amount of my time. So on that list of all the stuff I was doing, I'd really kind of put a dollar amount beside that. Hey, is this like a $5 an hour task? Is this a $10 an hour task? Or is it $100 an hour task? Focus on all those things that are high level that can produce you money, or that it costs a lot of money to hire this for. All those small things, like, you get those off your plate too, because it really doesn't make sense if CEO of simple wholesaling, I probably shouldn't be doing like $10 an hour task. Some of the stuff, I'll do them, and I need to get done, or I can do them if I need to and help out the team. But realistically, my time is better spent on building relationships and making connections and talking to people like Matt Camp over DealMachine.
Well, we're excited to have you on, man. It's always a joy. So, yeah. Do you, when I know you said, like, hey, there's that chicken or the egg problem. Do you have any advice for newbies who, they're consuming a lot of information, they're trying to educate themselves, they're thinking about systems, but they also know they need to take action to actually make deals happen like that? Is there a way to balance that in your mind?
Yeah. I think it's all about focus. I know a lot of times that you'll, listen to a course on YouTube, or go to a mastermind, or go to a RIA, or all those things. Any of us, if you're looking to build a business and you're looking to start off in real estate and stuff, more than likely you have that entrepreneurial mindset. So you're going to be attracted to, like, oh man, Matt said this, and Brian said this, and this, I could do this, and all this stuff. So you're going to have that, like, kind of shiny object syndrome, and see that squirrel and go after and things. But if you can, really, it just comes down to focus. When you come out of one of those meetings, or you take a course, or you have something, just focus on one or two things at a time. So, and I think that's for newbies, or that's for people that have, businesses that are operating at a super high level. Like, I work with business owners all the time that still struggle with that of focus, of like, oh, Matt Camp told me that he was doing this, and like, I should be able to do this to get deals. Like, that has nothing to do with your business. Just focus on what you want to do. So if you're starting off, especially, it's just like, figure out what you want to do, and that can change, and it probably will change. But just focus on one thing or two things and do them really, really well, and then move on from there. I think with your guys' product and DealMachine and what you guys do, we see a lot of people start off with this, and especially when it comes to lead generation. I always tell people, like, just pick one or two lead generation things and do them really, really well, and you're going to be just as successful as somebody that's doing 6 or 7 or 8. So
yeah. I mean, the focus thing for sure. I mean, like you said, whether you're just getting started or operating at a high level, bigger team and whatnot, that's absolutely crucial to not, go after that exciting new idea if it doesn't necessarily make sense to the, broader business. But
yeah.
Do you have any advice on assessing things like that, on identifying what your focus should be, on like what lens you should be putting it through to identify that?
Yeah, I really think it comes down to just like what. So when you figure out what that focus is, like, understanding your core focus and kind of figuring out what that box consists of. So when you build that box of, like, okay, if I'm going to be a wholesaler, if that's the track that you're going to want to take, and that's what you focus on, of like, hey, what does that look like? What are you going to wholesale? How am I going to do it? And you need to basically build that box around, hey, I'm going to wholesale. Like, 80% of everything I do has to revolve around this. And then the other 20%, maybe it's 10% on this side of the spectrum, and 10% that way, or whatever. But you got to know how far outside of those parameters you're going to go. But you got to focus on that buy box, or that business box, or whatever it is, whatever your core focus is. Make sure that you're spending 80% of your energy, opportunity, everything all on that, and then figure out how far outside of that you're going to go. So I know a lot of, coming back to this, just using wholesalers, because I know a lot of wholesalers are using your guys' product and stuff, of like, all of a sudden they want to wholesale a deal, but they get into it thinking like, okay, wholesale means single family houses. All of a sudden they get like a 20 unit, that's, kind of the same, and then they try to wholesale that. It's different numbers, it's different stuff, but maybe while they were focusing on that, it looked like a good deal, but while they were focusing on that, they lost 2 or 3 other deals because they lost track. And that's outside of their wheelhouse. That's outside of that box we were talking about.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it. Are there any other kind of major initial mistakes, or just easy pitfalls for newbies to fall into when they're going about thinking about processes and building out systems for the first time?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck in the trap of like judging themselves based off of other people's success or other people's failures. every market is different. Every city and every, different markets are different. Every different neighborhoods are different, stuff like that. But also people are different and businesses are different too. So if you're, as you're trying to figure out your focus, you can look at it and be like, oh man, I saw somebody on this webinar, I saw somebody on this YouTube page, they're doing this. So and they're successful with it. So I should do this, or I can do this. Like that might not fit your talents, and it might not fit your interest. Or it might not fit your market either. So all those things, trying to figure out like what really fits with what you want to do, who you are, and what is working within your market. And one of the best ways to figure that out is like look at what other people are doing around you. You look at your competition, look at getting all the Facebook groups and all that stuff, and figure out what's really working. And maybe you can go after that, or you can do the opposite of like, hey, this is what's working. I'm going to be the opposite of that, so I can like be better than them at certain things and stuff. So it's tough, but I think a lot of people get stuck in that trap of where they're judging themselves based off of other people, and that's never going to work. You got to figure out who you are and what you want, and then just go after that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much noise out there too that it's easy, it can be tough to filter that out and really focus. So I do get that. I did have one question on, how to think through just the idea of building out processes for the first time that really stick with you. And really, as you're going through this and as you're kind of establishing, okay, here's what our focus is, here's what it's going to look like. Do you have any advice on how to create processes that stick and that really, are consistently executed on?
Yep. So there's a couple different levels to that. So when we're talking about processes, like the process is really what you're doing. And then you have the second step of that is the procedure, which is how you're doing it. And then you have the policy, which is kind of like the timeline or who's doing it and everything like that. So really what I like to do is just like, and I just, you can use whether it's a Google Doc or a whiteboard or any of those things, literally just map out, you can do a mind map, or I use Lucid Chart to basically just map out all of our processes. And it's one of those things of like, I literally write down every step. So it's like, okay, if we're going to use DealMachine, okay, where do we start? Okay, so all right, you have to make sure you get logged into the system. Okay, are you logged in? Now what do you do? Okay, then you want to, you go through just step by step of like, how many properties do you want to put in each day? What's required? How do you put in a property? All those things. But literally just put out that map of like, if I'm going to use DealMachine, of like getting logged in the system all the way to actually getting a deal and signing the contract, what does that process look like? And just putting it on paper. And then the second step would be the procedures, where I make videos on just like, hey, here's how I do this. So if I want to do a video on, okay, here's how. Now, luckily, you guys have a lot of these procedure videos done. So for the people out there, but just make a video of how you do it and how it works within your system. And then that policy too. I like to put the policies in place to like, what's the time frame? So if I connect with a seller, what's the policy behind where I'm going to follow, and how many times am I going to follow up with them? How am I going to do that? How many days am I going to do that? And basically just put those policies in place as well. So really just mapping out, on paper or on a document or anything, just the process, which is what you're doing, the procedure, training videos or just videos on how you're doing it. And then the policies, the outline, the timeline of like when you need to get things done.
Yeah, and I appreciate the shout out for our YouTube channel as well. I know Elise puts a lot. I mean, Elise and the whole team does a ton of great work there. So if you're watching this, go to our YouTube channel playlist part, and under there you've got how to use DealMachine or demos or all kinds of stuff. So we've got our processes laid out that way too, but our recommended best practices at least for
there you go.
Community. But do you I know we touched on the more advanced investor a little bit there too. Where do you see them struggling most? Like, how does I know and especially the work that you do with Sharper and whatnot, I know that's probably skews more toward the scaling team and more advanced investors. So curious on the areas that you think that they can be most improving, or typically you can come in and help them think a little differently.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of those times it comes back to those processes that you might have created when you were starting off or building your business or whatever, of like how much like you get away from that as you build a business, and like, oh well, it's in my head, I'm just kind of used to it now. But all of a sudden you're bigger now and you have to bring somebody on. Where's that stuff at? Like you have to get it out of your head and you have to train somebody, to be able to do that. So I guess updating all those process and procedure maps are super critical and good, because as I said, a lot of times like people hire and all of a sudden they don't have that stuff in place. So that's tough. And then also it comes down to hiring and training. I think really training and onboarding somebody correctly, it makes all the difference in the world. So
Yeah.
Number one, that they're coming into a system that, or into a business that is set up for them to be successful, not for the business to be successful, which should happen if they're successful, but they're set up for them to be successful within their, for themselves, for their department, and then the team, and then like the whole business and stuff like that. So right down the line. So I feel like where a lot of businesses where they really struggle is, as number one, they hire too late because they, they're always they're at capacity, and they're like, oh man, I need I need to bring this person on or whatever. So make sure you hire when you have capacity to train them up and train them up correctly, and then bring them on board. But then also have all those processes and onboarding stuff and procedures and all those things ready for them to go. And that's really what it is. I think a lot of businesses too is like, when it comes down to that hiring thing of like, hiring people is a cost to the business. So sometimes it's just, they hold off on a little bit too long, and then it's too late, or they hire the wrong person. It's really important to get the right person in the right seat, and all those things. Or all of a sudden too, it comes into like, maybe you bring one person on and they do a great job for you, but all of a sudden, a year later, a year and a half later, really what that person's doing is not at all what they were good at or what you hired them for, just because your business grew. So they change positions, you move them
Yeah.
around, and it happens all the time and stuff. And with small businesses, it's people need to have multiple roles, but focus on what do you need to hire for that, keep them there if they're talented in that role.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know you guys are masters of the hiring and training pieces of it. And that could be a whole nother, huge interview there. Do you have any other kind of best practices on those, or any advice you can share of just things that are, maybe the lowest hanging fruit that you can make a big impact on in terms of advice when it comes to hiring and then training as well?
Yeah, I think just literally having a training schedule. I share with people all the time, like my training schedule for an acquisitions person, like bringing somebody on in acquisitions for real estate, like it's a pretty intensive job. Like that's the lifeblood of a lot of our businesses and stuff. So you know what? Their training's intense as well. Like ours is a 12-week program. Like I don't expect them to get a deal like within like in the first 12 weeks. Maybe around like week 10 or 11, they'll start, get some deals, but it's intensive, and like it goes through a whole process and things. I think a lot of people bring people on and they're just like, okay, here's the list. You got to call these people. Here's your script. Like we need you to get a deal tomorrow. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Like that's not realistic. You got to make sure and I'm not saying that like, hey, it has to be 12 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is, but it has to be you have to put some time into it and have that schedule to where it comes back to, like I said, like making sure they're set up for success, making sure they're supported and they're trained up on what you want them to do. So, and also time to evaluate them too. I don't know how many times like we'll see people bring somebody on and maybe they seem like a good person on paper, but once they get into it, like, man, it just doesn't fit them. And all of a sudden they're not getting deals. And why aren't they getting deals? Maybe they're a better lead manager than a closer, or maybe they're a better closer than a lead manager. Maybe they're just not good at organization or all those things. So really taking time to have that training outline for them, but also digging in and evaluating through that training process. I always like to go, I think this is where coming back to the teacher stuff, this is where it helps out for me of like, I wouldn't let a student move on to the next lesson unless they could teach that lesson to me. It's the same thing with training. If I'm bringing an employee on, I'm not going to let them loose until they prove to me that they can do it on their own without any help or any support or anything like that. So
yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
This has been awesome, man. I want to end too with one other question around as you scale that team, because I do know, like I said, there's definitely people who are hiring making that first hire, or maybe they're down the road a little bit and they're really trying to scale that team. When it comes to team culture, I know you guys have such a strong culture around, investing with a purpose and really kind of being able to have your whole team live that out. Do you have any advice for people on building a strong culture like that as well?
Yeah, a big part of that is having core values and like living your business is run by those core values. The core values are what I'm going to hire and fire over. There's some talented people that I've interviewed that I haven't hired because they didn't fit into our core values. So, so having core values and a purpose, and actually running the business by those, and everybody's on board with them, and we talk about them, we discuss them. It's just a huge part of the business and a huge part of that culture that comes into it. And it's one of those things, like I know we could be a lot better at it, but we still we are a Christian company. We pray together. And that's just a little those things that are a part of our culture and what we do every day. And you don't have to be a Christian to work for us, but we are going to pray. And it's like, if it's going to make you uncomfortable, that's probably not a good, like you might not fit, you might not be a culture fit, and that's up to them and stuff to decide. But So there's a lot of things of just having those core values and putting those in place, I think are really important. And like I say, our core values really have nothing to do with being a Christian. It's just about running a business how we want to run it. And that's what I'm going to hire and fire over. And I think I tell people all the time, like one of our core values is to do the right thing. So how this relates to business and building the culture and stuff, I'm never going to fire a person for stealing money from our company, but I would fire them for not doing the right thing. So it relates back to our core values and stuff. So it's interesting. But then also part of that culture, I think when your company is growing and so when we look at an accountability chart of like, hey, here's our business, here's who does what and how it looks. I like to keep two accountability charts, one for how our business looks right now, and then one for how I want our business to look like in the future. And I want to share that with my team. I want to like them to be a part of that and see what that is. So it's not like, oh, we need to hire somebody tomorrow. It's like, oh, wait, is my job okay? Like, where's it come from? They know like, okay, we need to have this many people in this role. If we're doing this amount of business, we need to have this many people. Or, hey, at the end of Q2, we're going to hire somebody for this if we're at this level. So they already know in advance what's going on or what happens. Or if you have to let somebody go or somebody leaves your business too, of having, not just sending out an email and say, hey, Matt Camp's gone, by the way, he's not, but it's like, hey, let's jump on a meeting. I want to explain what happened. Or, you're not going to dig into the details, of course, but you're going to explain to them like, hey, this is what's going on. This is where business is going. Here's how we're going to bounce back from this and all those things. So just being open and honest and transparent is a huge part of that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you laying all this out, simply for our audience as well. Like very actionable stuff here too, which is great. And I know this was definitely a little bit of a different topic for us too. It's not all about finding the deals. It's thinking about like, hey, how can we build a team? How can we have a bigger mission together like that? So,
yeah, I mean, 100%. It's one thing that's what we came back from the beginning of, like saying like the sales stuff and the operation stuff, like businesses need both. So we can all go out there and get deals and pay for lead gen and talk to sellers. And there's a lot of information about that. But I think when it comes down to that, the operations and the process maps and even the purpose behind all those things, the business needs that too. If you're going to have a successful business, like it needs all that stuff. And that's what we see of like when businesses that are successful, especially in this thing, they have a lot of those things in place, or at least two of those three of those things or whatever, right. Those in place. But the ones that, they come in and they get a couple deals done and they burn out within a year, they don't have any of that stuff in place. They don't have the operations behind it, the processes, or a reason behind anything that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I 100% agree. Like if you have that strong culture, the strong, vision, values, and mission like that laid out for you, I mean, that'll resonate through the team and your new hires will be able to understand how they're going to be a fit as well. So
yeah, 100%.
Well, hey, appreciate you coming on, Brian. Thanks again for sharing all this stuff. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you as well?
Yeah, if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to reach out. It's just brian@simplewholesaling.com. So more than happy to help you out there, or just jump on our Facebook page at simplewholesaling.com. You can see all the stuff we're doing on there as well.
Yeah, and you guys are always putting out fantastic info. I know we've got quite a few things. If you check, we'll link here to free resources from us on scaling your real estate investing and an ebook there. So I think a lot of that will apply to what Brian's talking about here today. But thanks again for coming on, man. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Yeah, and to everyone watching, this is Matt Camp with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.